Greetings, thank you for watching. Welcome back. I think I'm going to do a May favorites video. I talked to the Mink about that, and we haven't done anything like that in a while, so I thought I'd give it a try. It's mostly books. I did make an addition to the DVD Blu-ray collection, so I'll show you what I picked up there. I might have got it in late April, but I didn't get it displayed until just about a week or two ago. So I'll show you that and get you caught up on that. Getting to the books, the one I'm reading now is My Story. It's a story of Tom L. Johnson, who was the mayor of Cleveland. He was I don't know if you'd say an industrialist, but he was from a family that lost everything after the Civil War, and they rebuilt themselves, and eventually came to Cleveland, Ohio, where he was involved in railroads and trolleys and public transportation. And he actually was an inventor also, and he invented the fare box for public transportation with the glass panels in them, so when you put the coin or the token in, the driver could actually see that it was a real coin or token, which was a very big thing for them at that time. Unfortunately, this book has about a fourth of it where the pages on the bottom have never been cut. So you kind of have to open it up and tilt it to be able to read the pages. I don't want to mess it up, but it's kind of frustrating that there's so many pages. Quality control back in, I think this was done in 1901. Nope, 1911. But I've just started this, and it was interesting to see that he actually invented that fare box. Another book that I finished was The Years Were Good by Louis B. Seltzer. He was a newspaper guy, editor of the Cleveland Press, editor-in-chief of Scripps Howard Newspapers of Ohio. Now, the Cleveland Press is no longer being printed, but one of the crossover things that I found interesting with this is back in 1954, there was a murder in the city of Bay Village, which is a suburb west of Cleveland on the shores of Lake Erie. And I've just finished two books, The Wrong Man by James Neff and The Shepherd Murder Case by Paul Holmes. He was the editor of the press back at that time and was very vocal, but he got his point across in the writing with front page editorials that he put in the press. I'll give you a sample of some of the pages that were printed during this trial, or actually before the trial. Somebody is getting away with murder. Why no inquest? Do it now, Dr. Gerber. Dr. Gerber was the coroner for Cuyahoga County at the time. Why don't the police quiz number one suspect, meaning the husband of the victim, Sam Shepard, who was a doctor? Quit stalling and bring him in. Celebrezze, who was the governor of Ohio at the time, says Bay mayor is protecting murder suspect. A lot of inflammatory things, and Seltzer said he'd do it again it says in the book that he would do it again if confronted with the same circumstances. So kind of an interesting crossover between this and the Sam Shepard books. His father, ironically, Charles Seltzer, came to the city that I was employed in long before I showed up, and was a very successful mayor for the city of North Olmsted, and also happened to be the guy that started the North Olmsted Municipal Bus Line, which was the country's longest municipally owned bus line up until its demise in the 2000s, I think, or late 90s, 2000s. But his father, Charles Seltzer, not only created the bus line, but also the first fire department in North Olmsted, bought the first fire engine. Actually, the first two buses that the bus line used was paid for by his father. So there's a local connection too, besides the career he had as that he had, Lewis, as the press editor and editor-in-chief of Scripps Howard. This was a bus token that I would have had when I rode the bus, probably in first grade. It says North Olmsted Bus Line, and on the other side it says school ticket. And it's kind of funny that his dad created that bus line, and the book I'm reading now is the guy that invented the glass fare box. And you would have dropped that in there. The driver could have seen that it was a fare and a real token. Push that, it would have dropped down into a collection bin down below, and there would have been a key that would have opened this door. I don't have a lock on it. And there would have been another box that you could pull out that would have another key that would open that box, and then they could deposit the coins. This one was made by the Main Fare Box and Supply Company in Willoughby, Ohio, and I'm pretty sure they're still manufacturing fare boxes and other things. But that was actually from CTS, which was Cleveland Transit System bus that was running when I was a kid. It's now the Regional Transit Authority, or the RTA, in Cleveland. So I thought I'd show you that. That's kind of an interesting crossover. And then the Shepherd Murder. This one was published in 1961. This one was in 2001. There's a lot of information in this that wasn't in this. There's some information in this that wasn't in this. So it's, you think, well, why would you want to read two books about the same thing? That's why I read the two books, and I have a couple more coming. If someone were to write a fictional tale of this event, you would say, no, that would never happen. Couldn't happen. That's why the system is in place, so something like that can't happen. Well, in July of 1954 in Bay Village, Ohio, Cuyahoga County, it happened. What they did to this guy, and it's chronicled more with appeals in this book. And then later on, justice did come around, which you'll read about in this one, where he was acquitted. And then there was another case later on that was instrumental with his son going through the courts in Cuyahoga County. But it's a good read, but it's frustrating at the same time. It's just hard to believe this would happen. I've been also reading The Titanic, A Night to Remember by Walter Lord. This one is probably the best Titanic book to read. I'm surprised it took me this long to get a copy of it and actually read it. I think this was done in 1955, and I was fortunate enough to find a first edition. Again, this is a very popular book. I think it's now in its 50th printing. The dust jacket is kind of toast, but somebody fortunately was able to preserve it in the archival plastic covering. But an excellent read. I finally got to read that one. The Titanic Tragedy, God Speaking to the Nations by Mrs. Alma. Let's see if I can get this. What's Alma's name? Alma White. This was done in 1913, a year after the sinking of the Titanic. And there's a lot of correlation between the Titanic incident and some of the things that have happened in the Bible and things of that nature. Interesting read. Some amazing photographs. There's pictures in here that I hadn't seen before. So that was interesting. And 1912, or 1912, because that's the year it sank, facts about the Titanic. And this is a new pickup. I haven't really had a chance to look at this yet, so that might be in a future video. Another one you might have seen briefly, and this is from 1885, is the Ohio Farmer's Law Book. Kind of a funny, interesting read. In section 17, under Guardian and Ward, there's a section for drunkards. When appointed, when any resident of the county is incapable of taking care and or preserving his or her property by reason of habitual drunkenness, the probate court shall forthwith appoint a guardian of the property of such person, which guardian shall, by virtue of such appointment, be guardian of the minor child or children in his ward in case no other appointed, and all laws relating to guardians for the lunatics, idiots, and imbeciles and their wards, and all laws pointing out to the qualifications, duties, rights, and liabilities of such guardians and their sureties are applicable to the guardians contemplated by this title, number 6317. Well, there you have it. So that was just a section on drunkards. But kind of interesting. I don't think they have that language around anymore, but they did then. Another one that I have looked at is from 1920. This is a third printing of First Aid in Emergencies, Eldridge L. Eliason, M.D. Kind of almost a pocketbook of what to do in certain situations. Some cool illustrations. Just a little guy, and it's got the thumb index for the pages. But there's for dressings, wounds, bleeding, when to use heat and cold, fractures, sprains, unconsciousness, suffocation, drugs and poisons. Got a lot of stuff in there. Another one that I've picked up that was interesting from 1909, which is actually, I think, a school book, public school book, is Dumb Animals and How to Treat Them. So I was kind of confused. It actually, in looking at it and through it, it kind of gives heads up to animal abuse and how to spot a sick animal and how to treat it and how to report and do things with regards to animal abuse. So it's a little bit more in depth than what I thought it would be. Another one that's a new edition is Strange Facts About Death. This has got all kinds of stuff in it. So when I get through this, I'll give you a heads up on what's in here. Different rituals and masks of death, and I'll let you know. So that's kind of cool. Unsafe at Any Speed. I finally got to read this. This was a long time coming. Should have been something I read a while ago. Not just about the Corvair. It's about the automotive industry, and a lot of things happened because of this book. The EPA was made. Vehicle recalls, accountability. A lot of people are kind of negative towards Ralph Nader because of this book. I think it was a well-written, needed book. One I won't get into too much information on is Unfinished Murder by James Neff. It's a Cleveland thing. Kind of a correlation between what negative things can happen to someone. This guy affected so many people and it's a good read, but it's a frustrating read. It's about a serial rapist that was in Cleveland, Ohio, and he was finally caught. It seems like there were almost too many cooks in the kitchen, that there was a lot of information here and here and here, and if all of that had been combined, they might have been able to get this guy off the streets much sooner. It's speculation, but he eventually was convicted. He actually received between, I think, 1,000 something and 3,000 years of prison. Pretty much zero chance of any kind of parole. It came into a moot point in 2018. There was an accident, as Haywood would describe it, from Shawshank Redemption, where he fell off a roof at the prison and succumbed to his injuries. On a little bit lighter note, this is a very small 93-page book on the Golden Jubilee of the city of Cleveland, Ohio, which starts its history back when Moses Cleveland came and surveyed the city and mapped out all the streets and the waterways and did everything. That was very interesting. Finished The Mighty Fitz, the story of the Edmund Fitzgerald, one of the crew members, one of the 29 that died in the sinking of the Fitzgerald, lived in the city that I worked in. That was a very interesting read. That was done by Michael Schumacher. Also picked up Confessions of a Railroad Signalman. This is from 1908. A couple things about this that I like is it was back in a time when the railroad was the big steam engines. And this is a book that chronicles several of the crashes and mishaps of railroad traffic back in the day. And sometimes when I'm reading these books, especially the old ones like this and some from the 1800s, I'm always fascinated as to who was the original owner of the book. What were their take on holding this book, reading the same pages that I'm reading in 2020? Was it something that they were learning from, something they were interested in, somebody trying to get information to try and keep things happening in the future? And fortunately, I bought this from eBay. The seller, and I'll call her Lynn, basically had thanked me for my purchase and said that the book was a collection of her father-in-law, and that he had passed away a couple years ago and was a train collector and drove a Model T Ford and wood boat restorer, among other things, and that he kind of started a railroad library that was available to his friends and family and people in the neighborhood, that they can come and get books like this and read it and bring it back. And it's just fascinating to get insight as to a little bit of the history of something that's been around since the early 1900s. That was kind of fun. I still haven't got to the book on P.T. Barnum. I know I've showed you this before, so that's still something I need to read. Kind of a copper-colored, fancy-looking book on Nikola Tesla. I'm looking forward to reading about him. I have another one from Reader's Digest, Historic Places. It's got about 10 different places that they feature. That's Mount Vernon on the cover of the book, George Washington's home in Virginia. But on the 10 kind of featured ones, I've been to, I think, 4 or 5 or 6 of them, quite a few. But then in the back, they have a lot of different areas in the country that you can visit. And I've been to some of those. And this was, I think I paid $5 for this. And I kind of messed up a little bit with Ben Franklin. I got the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. This is an Easton Press, and I think I've shown this before. Real fancy, gilded gold edging on the pages, and his biography. And then in thinking about it, I thought, you know what, I want to get the Poor Richard's Almanac, that was written by Franklin, but he used the name Richard Saunders. I think it was Richard Saunders. I think same kind of fancy pages, face pages, Richard Saunders. So I picked that up, and then I started thinking about, if anybody's watched the National Treasure movie, especially the first one, they talk about the Silence Dogood letters. Basically, that was Ben Franklin's attempt to get published in his brother James' newspaper in Boston. And there was a group of guys that were friends of James who would submit things to the paper and he would print them, and Franklin didn't want to be a typesetter. He was James Franklin's apprentice, which means he was pretty much bound to work for his brother for 5 years. And he started to submit things along with a group of friends, and his brother wouldn't print what Ben wrote. Kind of upset him. So he came up with a fake name, Mrs. Silence or Miss Silence Dogood, and wrote a series of letters that actually was published. James knew that there was no elderly lady named Silence Dogood, but the letters were popular and he was getting good response from them, so he kept printing them. And eventually he found out Ben was writing them, and it kind of torqued him off and caused some problems. In the meantime, I think he got caught with his friends writing stuff, and he actually put the paper, the newspaper, in Ben's name, so to speak, so he could keep it operating. But that caused a big problem, and Ben got kind of upset with his brother and said, you know, I'm out of here. He goes, you can't leave, you're here for 5 years. He goes, nope, see ya. And he went to Philadelphia, which turned out really good for Philadelphia and the rest of us. But then I started thinking about, I need to get the Silence Dogood letters, because I don't know, I haven't been through here yet, but I don't know if they're published in either one of these books. So I found a book from the Library of America. It's got a nice slipcase, pretty sturdy cover. Pretty thick book that I think is, I don't know if it's ever been opened, because the first time I opened it, you got that like creaking noise. And this has the autobiography, the Silence Dogood letters, and the Poor Richard's Almanac, all in one book. So I'm going to see if what is in here is repeated in these here, and I think I might thin the herd a little bit. I'm not sure. We'll see what we have with shelf space. So that was pretty much it for the books. And the one edition that I picked up for the DVD is a specially packaged set of the Die Hard movies, which comes in this plastic model of the Nakatomi Tower from the movie. And it's kind of nice. It has a compartment that opens in the back, in the base, and in the base, it's all about the bass. Never liked that song. Right you are, Mink. There's a box that comes with the Blu-ray movie set, which includes all 5 movies. Yep, they're in there. The Die Hard behind the scenes booklet. And a set of cards. There's 5 of them, of all of the bad guys. It shows their picture and then their affiliation, criminal plan, quote, and status from the movie. I won't give the status because there's spoiler alerts. But, yep, there he is, Hans Gruber. Rest in peace, Alan Rickman. So again, this all this material goes into the slipcase or the cover, which then goes into the base of the building. That closes up, and there you have it. It's all in one place, Nakatomi Tower. So having seen that building in our trip to Los Angeles, and not expecting to see it, when I found this was actually made and available, I thought, you know, I want to try and get one of those, and I was fortunate enough to find it and be able to get it. So it worked out well. So I think that's it for the May things that I've been enjoying, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. Be safe, be healthy, take some pictures, learn your cameras, practice, and have fun. I'll talk to you later. Bye!